Is it really possible for pastors to create income outside the church, even if you're a missionary serving in East Africa? We'll talk about that with special guest Dr. Danny Davis, and we'll discuss his new book, The Way of the Shepherd, From Anxiety to Assurance, Embracing the Timeless Wisdom of Psalm 23, in this episode of the More Than a Pastor Show. Let's get started. Hello, my friend. Welcome to the More Than a Pastor Show. I'm Rich Avery, your host. This is a show where we help pastors, missionaries, and other ministry leaders to grow your income and build financial security. We'll help you take your skills, experience, and ministry know-how and leverage them into sustainable income outside the church through a business or a side hustle that's right for you so you can serve God and provide for your family no matter what. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate the time that we can spend together with each episode. If you're new to the show, you can learn more about me, get the show notes for today's episode, and download some free resources to help you grow your income and build financial security. That's over at my website at morethanapastor.com/70 for episode 70. As we begin a new calendar year, are you feeling the weight of financial concerns for your church right now? Maybe wondering if there's a better way to ignite a culture of generosity within your congregation? Are you feeling like it's time to explore alternative revenue streams beyond typical church model of tithes and offerings? Well, know that you are not alone, and we are here to help walk along that journey with you and help you to grow your church's income and your own income as a pastor. We offer individualized coaching to help you unlock strategies that are right for you and your church so you can diversify your income streams, foster a growing culture of generosity, and navigate today's church funding challenges with confidence. Don't let financial challenges hinder your ministry's impact or jeopardize your own personal livelihood. Take the first step today towards financial resilience and sustainability. That's a hard word to say sometimes. And book your free 30-minute strategy session. You can go to morethanapastor.com/coaching and sign up for that today. Again, morethanapastor.com/coaching. I'm so excited to have my friend, Dr. Danny Davis, on the show today. Danny will also be with us in our next episode as well. Our discussion was so good and packed with so many valuable insights that I just couldn't fit it all into one episode. I first met Danny through our friend, Pastor John Stange's Platform Launchers community probably about 3 years ago. And I was blessed at that time to discover that Danny was a longtime church planter and missionary. And he was on a journey to creating new sources of revenue for himself as a writer. As a missions pastor for many years, Danny's story really resonated with me. And I found that it fueled my passion to help missionaries find new ways to fund their ministry outside the traditional missionary funding models, which are really becoming more difficult today to sustain than ever before. So in our conversation today, Danny and I talk about his 30 plus years of ministry as a pastor, church planter, and missionary and equipper, and how he began to leverage all that ministry experience into books and other resources that inspire and bless others and generate multiple streams of income for himself. I also asked Danny why he feels strongly about pastors creating income outside the church. His answer just might surprise you. And he takes us into the backstory behind his new book entitled The Way of the Shepherd, From Anxiety to Assurance, Embracing the Timeless Wisdom of Psalm 23. And we explore why the message of Psalm 23 is needed in the church and in our world now more than ever. Also, FYI, in our next episode, part 2 of our conversation, Danny shares valuable insights that he's learned on his journey as a writer, a self-published writer, and how any pastor can create sustainable income as a writer. You won't want to miss that. To learn more about Danny, please visit his website, equippedservant.com. And now let's get to part 1 of our conversation with Danny Davis. Hey, Danny, welcome to the More Than a Pastor show.
Hey, Rich. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And Danny, I've been glad to get to know you just a little bit. I don't know, met online. Maybe it's been 2 years or more through John Stange's Platform Launchers. online group, and so it's been great to get to know you a little bit and learn about your work as a pastor for many years and a missionary, and your interest in entrepreneurship. So, why don't you just give us a bit of your background and how you got involved in ministry, what you're doing right now as a missionary, and maybe tell us about your entrepreneurial journey with that also.
Yeah, wow. I hope we have enough time.
We'll just keep the tape rolling as long as it
Yeah,
takes. We can do
yeah.
like 6 episodes out of this. Who
There
knows?
we go. Yeah, my wife and I, we've been married for 32 years,
Hmm.
been in ministry for 32 years. So we started right out of the gun, and as just young kids having no idea what ministry was about. And but now, 32 years later, we've served on two continents. For almost 20 of those years, we've been in Africa. We spent 12 years in the country of South Africa, where we pastored there for 12 years at Turning Point Community Church, and then planted three other churches in the Johannesburg urban area.
Hmm.
And then felt like the Lord led us back to the United States, where we were asked to take a church that was literally going to sell the building, lock the doors, and closed down after
Hmm.
85 years of ministry. And we spent almost 8 years there, revitalizing that church and watching God just turn that thing around and going from just a handful of people to a thriving, healthy church in a small rural community of just a few thousand people in Missouri. But toward, around year 7 or so, we just felt like our two sons were grown, they were getting married, and we were kind of in a season of transition. And we always knew that we would come back to the continent. We don't know how long, but for whatever season. And just felt like the Lord put Uganda in our heart, and so we've been here now for we served in Burundi for a year while we were working out some issues, some visa things here,
Hmm.
and then but we've been here now for 2 years, and my primary responsibility is I have founded the Uganda School of Ministry, where we train pastors theologically and in leadership with the Assembly of God World Missions. And so we've started three learning centers
Hmm.
in the west, north, and east of the country, and currently have about 60 students there uh, who are either currently pastoring but have never had access to theological education, or are looking to plant new churches primarily in rural communities, which, Uganda's pretty rural, to be honest with
Hmm.
you. And yeah, just doing what we can until until we can't, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And but yeah, and so that's kind of our ministry journey in a nutshell. Uh, but in during that time, I've always loved writing.
Hmm.
I remember I was thinking about this the other day, and I think this is a good story to share. But the when I was in like third grade, second or third grade, actually was born and raised in Ohio. Please don't hold that against me. You from Michigan?
Let me find my Michigan hat somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Get that word
So,
out of here.
so I'm a Buckeye by birth, and
Okay, fair enough.
yeah, and so our teacher came to us and said, "We're all going to write a book." And she gave us like, now this is, I'll tell my age. We had no computers. We had an IBM Select Writer or whatever it was called, and she like gave us 4 pages of typing paper, and we had to write a book and draw pictures. And so I wrote, I don't know, probably 50 words
Hmm.
on the Battle of Iwo Jima,
Hmm.
and then I drew pictures, and I love the dedication of that teacher. She took all of those 20, 25 students' books, papers, took them home, bound them in cardboard covers with paper around them, put Dewey Decimal labels on them, put a front cover, and then we all got to put our book in the library
Hmm.
at our school. And that sparked, even at that early age, a love for reading, a love for writing, but I never felt confident to write. Like, it's the whole imposter syndrome thing. I mean, I have a
Hmm.
doctorate. I have, I've taught all over the world. I've done all this, but it wasn't until about 6 years ago that I actually felt like, you know what? Maybe all this experience, I have something to say.
Hmm.
And I still don't know if that's true, but I think I'm getting a little better at believing that I have something to say. And so just began that journey of beginning to put uh, you know pen to paper or
Hmm.
and put some thoughts down and begin to process those and work through those and then I realized there was this massive industry that I
Hmm.
knew nothing about when it came to publishing. And uh, my first book was done through a traditional publisher. They took my doctoral dissertation where I studied rural dying churches and that had come back to life and became healthy and were revitalized. And I studied the leadership concepts of that. That became my doctoral work. They picked that up and took all the academic stuff out of it and turned it into a book. And then that kind of sparked the journey. But I realized, though I had a great experience with the traditional publisher, it was a small press. I had a great experience with them. They were great. But I realized I think I can do this. I think I can actually do what they're doing. And so I began working on a second book and began just Rich, I could not number the hours I have watched YouTube videos and free courses and Facebook groups and all this. And it's one of the reasons I connected with John Stange's group because in all of that research of learning this industry, it has come upon that. And so yeah, it's it, it, it it's a massive industry, the independent publishing. Now I have my own imprint and I'm working through that. And yeah, I don't know where to go from there, but just uh, so just released a new book. But
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about your new book here soon, and I've had the privilege of reading it and was really blessed by it. Before we dive into that book, though, could you touch on why is creating an extra income stream important to you? You mentioned that, hey, I'm in business, I'm writing books, and I'm hoping that it'll be an income stream for my family in addition to what you do in pastoral ministry. So why is that important to you as a pastor?
do you want the fluff answer or do you want the real answer?
I hope our listeners would like the real answer. So,
Okay, here's the real answer. I entered ministry 32 years ago and never gave one thought to retirement.
hmm,
And I didn't plan. And no one said, you need to plan. But,
hmm,
I have predominantly worked in churches that weren't able to offer retirement, plan like a 403b or
yeah,
an IRA or something. Thankfully, that's not the case now. But about 5 or 6 years ago, as I'm beginning this writing journey, honestly, in my mind, it was like, I've got to create something that's going to help me. I mean, I'm 54 years old. I'm getting to that point of, I mean, I'm in ministry, so I'll probably never retire, but
yep,
but at least you know what I'm saying. But at least between now and then, I can build a stream that could
Hmm,
very much be of benefit in those latter years.
yeah,
Um, and I wish if I could go back to my 20-something-year-old self and say, you know what, just put that $25 behind. Don't go out to eat. Don't, you
hmm,
know. And then almost all of my ministry in the States for me has been bivocational.
okay,
So, but I was either working part-time for another company and part-time for the church. So like the company didn't offer
hmm,
you see what I'm saying?
sure, yep,
And so the honest, flat answer is I began to realize, man, I'm so far behind the ball.
hmm,
What can I do? How can I join what I'm doing with this and
yeah,
begin to develop something that could come into a business? I mean, we're in the early stages. We're still pushing forward.
yep,
But honestly, I think it will become
hmm,
a source of revenue that will help us over the hump, if you will,
yeah,
uh,
that's great.
in our later years. And
Hmm.
Rich, you talk with pastors way more than I do. And if you say something like, "Do you have a retirement?" I'm going to guess the answer is more often than not. I've kind of given everything to the Lord.
Hmm.
I took this church, they couldn't afford it, but they couldn't pay me much either.
Yeah.
So there really wasn't anything left over, to put $50 a month away and for better or worse, that's kind of where we're at. But,
Mm.
you know, but, um, but that was that's kind of a driving force behind it, to be quite
Mm.
honest with
Sometimes that's a motivator, and I think it's great for us to be thinking about the future. And God
you.
calls us, before He's called us as pastors, He's called us to provide for our family,
Mhm.
and He's given us means to do that. And I feel like a lot of times pastors are thinking, well, He's providing through my ministry in the church, or maybe I'm a missionary and I have the support, but we don't often think that God can provide through those other means, through
Mhm.
the other skills and talents He's given us, so we could have an income stream outside of those things that could provide and meet our needs, and also allow us to give more. A lot of pastors wish they could be
Sure.
more generous in giving, but they're living on very low income and
Mhm.
can't be the model that they'd like to be for their congregation. So,
Exactly. Yeah. I think the motivation is right. We want to provide for our family. We want to be generous and all that. We just have to find that discipline.
mm,
Let's face
yeah,
it. We got to find the discipline to say, this is a business and I'm going to work it like a business, even though it's
mm,
dealing with spiritual content.
yeah,
It's still, so I'm learning the marketing, I'm learning the craft, I'm
good.
doing all that to move forward. And
Hmm. Do you
yeah,
get any pushback, Danny, from people in the church or the missions agency or whatever when you say, "Hey, I'm working on creating this income stream in addition to my ministry"? Sometimes pastors get pushback in congregations, or they, in their own mind, it's maybe the pushback is more in their mind than anything else. So, have you dealt with that personally or from other people?
you know, uh, not so much from the church side. The
Mm,
church we were pastoring right before we came back
mm,
to the continent, um, they were very. I mean, I really wasn't looking at it a business then. I was just
okay.
writing and putting some stuff out. But the missions agency, not really, because it doesn't take away from what I'm doing. It actually
Mhm.
adds to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right. It brings a new level of credibility. It brings
Hmm.
a level of
Published author.
public, right? That kind of a thing. And
Yeah.
um, I will say this though, t- two 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 areas of pushback that I've had to deal with. Number one is me,
Hmm.
and you alluded to that. My wife puts it this way. She says, "You're really good at saying no for other people." In other words, I'm already figuring out how they're going to say no, and I haven't even asked them the question.
Mm,
Right. And so then I don't ask the question because I've already convinced myself they're going to say no. Right. They're going to
okay.
reject this. They're going to turn this away or whatever. But then when I finally get brave enough to go ask, they're like, "Oh, hey, go ahead, do that." And you're
Mm.
like, "Well, that's not the answer I expected." The the second place of pushback has come from other ministers,
Hmm.
like who read your stuff and then they nitpick it to death.
Yeah.
Okay, I I've been doing this for 30 something years. I got a pretty good handle on theology.
Hmm.
I've got a pretty good handle on missiology. I've got a lot of experience practically and all that. But there's always someone who wants to take that and say, "Oh, you should have used this word and not that word." And I literally shut down writing a book because a guy read a piece of my book before it was published and he made a comment that really just it just got all
Mm.
over me. Is that okay to say?
Wow.
Can we be that way? And I just stopped writing. I'm like, I'm horrible. I'm a terrible person. I miss this
Mm.
or whatever. And then a few months later, I'm like, what am I doing? This
Mm.
guy's keeping me hostage,
Yeah.
and I don't need to be a hostage to this. It's putting anxiousness in my heart and mind, and so do I need feedback? Absolutely.
Mm.
Do so that's one of the things I'm working on now. I not only need an editor to look at the grammar,
Mm.
but because I'm writing Christian content, I need someone with a theological
Mm.
foundation to look to, right? To
Okay.
make sure
Yeah.
I'm, you know, call me a heretic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If I write heresy, call me a heretic.
Yeah.
But sometimes we choose a wrong word or we do something that maybe we don't explain as well as maybe we could have in a different
Yeah.
thing. And people, and so be careful about letting that control you
Mm, that's good.
because as other, we want the approval of our colleagues. We want
Yeah.
people to like what we're putting in. And I finally just said, you know what, about this particular person, I can't find anything you've ever written. You don't have a blog. You don't put nothing out. You don't produce content. You put nothing out into the world, but you're constantly badgering other people who are brave enough to put
Mm,
something out into the world.
wow.
Right. And you have to deal with that
Yeah.
because it's not about you. It's probably more about them
Mm.
than anything. And then you get these oddballs on Amazon or whatever who put up, they put up a
Yeah.
1-star review and it's like
Yeah.
they're blatantly anti-Christian and they're just trying to find a
Gotcha.
way to destroy, something like
Yep.
that. And thank God for 1-star reviews is what I say. It keeps me honest, right? It keeps me
Take a minute
honest.
and pray
And
for those people and move on.
yeah, yeah, and then move on. Yeah, just
Yep.
like whatever,
Mm.
you're a keyboard warrior, and hiding behind your
Yeah.
screen. But
Yep. Yep.
yeah, I mean, I think those are the two. But
Good.
I could honestly see where, if you're spending 6 of your hours a day doing this, and you're not, but you've entered into an agreement with a congregation to do a certain thing, you need to have integrity
Hmm.
about all that, and be honest with them.
Yeah.
I need extra income, whether it's doing plumbing jobs on the side or writing books, doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. Um, Even in my last pastorate, I I taught 12 hours a semester at
Mm.
college.
Okay.
I was doing my doctorate. I was raising a family.
Oh my goodness. You had a couple of full-time jobs there.
Yeah, and I had kids at home still and all that. And I was so thankful that I had a congregation that was they were for that. They
Mm,
were like, we want to see you move forward. We want to see you progress.
that's
But I
great.
had an eldership who were entrepreneurs, who were people who
Mm,
were, or maybe not entrepreneurs, but they were making a living in like sales
okay.
or
Yep.
things like that, and
Mm,
they understood what it took, and even advised me in certain areas. And so I've been fortunate that way. I know others have not, and
mm, that's
but I
great.
think just be upfront, have integrity, and
Good.
yeah,
Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great segue into your new book, The Way of the Shepherd, when you were talking about anxiety and people putting stress on you and things like that. Psalm 23 perhaps has something to say about
yeah,
those
yeah.
things. I was privileged to be able to get an advanced copy and read through it. And to be honest, Danny, at first I thought another book about Psalm 23. I mean, there
Sure.
have been so many that have been written, and but after I started to read yours, I was personally blessed by the content and by your heart and what you shared. And I thought, man, this is like a wonderful daily devotional type thing. Each chapter could be a daily thing that could really help get a person reoriented if they've been going through stressful time or fearful time or whatever. So, but first, I'd
Mhm.
love to hear what was your motivation? What interested you in writing a book on Psalm 23, and what's been your joy in putting that out there for people?
Yeah, I was doing I was asked to teach a course to missionaries on how hermeneutics.
Hmm.
I won't get too detailed with this, but how hermeneutics plays out in this context.
Hmm.
So in like an honor shame context, instead
Oh,
of a
yeah.
individual in a collectivistic context, instead of
Yeah.
like a Western individualistic And I found a paper written by an African scholar about the view uh, how how uh, how in the African context they interpret Psalm 23,
Hmm.
and it just sparked something in me that wait a minute, I've always
Yeah.
looked at this as this pastoral sort of, I don't know, almost like, dreamland of, oh, I'm going to walk through the valley and I'm never going to be, this kind of a thing. But I
Hmm.
began to see that there was a structure in this psalm where David begins by basically saying, the Lord is my shepherd. He's making this declaration that I need a shepherd. Something's going on. And we know the stories of David, we know his life. Um, but I began to see this structure where we were led from the anxiousness
Hmm.
to reconciliation with the Father, and then and then on down the line to a place of peace where we may not be sitting and drinking cool water from a stream in a green pasture every day, literally, but we have assurance that no matter what we walk through, whatever anxiety we feel, whatever situations, circumstances we're walking through, that he's right there. And honestly, I had the same thing that you said. I thought, Lord, I've read 30 books on Psalm 23, and I'm like, and then I'm like, what am I going to add to this that nobody else has added? And I just felt like we live in such a tumultuous time.
Mm.
We live in a time where anxiety is through the roof, where even those who are believers are just anxious, fearful. What's going to happen in the world? What's going to happen in the next election cycle? What's going to happen in the next this, that?
Yeah.
And I thought, man, if we could just reconnect,
Mm.
with something that is so familiar
Mm.
that we've forgotten. It's so familiar, we've forgotten the message of it,
Wow.
that we are reconciled to the Father. And then in that reconciliation, Paul puts it like this: we are in Christ.
Mm.
That being that we're not only in Christ, he's in us,
Mhm.
and that is an empowerment beyond any other empowerment in the world, to be able to take fear, anxiety, those kind of things, grab onto them, and not be. I'm not one of these guys that's like, I'm just gonna not confess that I'm anxious or whatever. No, I think you gotta get it out there. You gotta talk to the Lord about it. You gotta lay this out before him and let him direct you. But somehow Psalm 23 had become so familiar that I read it
Mm.
without thinking about it.
Mm.
Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's like one of the first things I learned how to memorize, or I
Hmm.
memorized in church.
Yeah.
I mean, even even in my secular high school before a football game, we quoted the Lord's Prayer and Psalm
Mm.
23, right?
My goodness.
And it's like
Those
I thought,
days, wow.
yeah, you can really tell how old I am now, right?
Hmm.
It's like nobody does that now, but I thought if somehow we could see the process of Psalm
Hmm.
23, of
Yeah.
moving from this anxiousness that drives me to say I need a shepherd who will help
Hmm.
me not to lack, and begin to walk that path out. It's not
Hmm.
easy.
Hmm.
You've got to come to grips with the fact that the anxiousness that the world has is coming down upon us, and
Yeah.
that we're adopting it sometimes, that
Mm.
we're taking it upon us. We have work stress. If we're in ministry, there's enough stress there to, hopefully it drives you to your knees in prayer.
Hmm.
But I thought if we could just get back to the simplicity of simply believing he's with me,
Yeah.
he's with me. And I know that sounds trite and maybe even cliche,
Mm.
but you know what? It's true.
Mm.
It's true. And we were walking through, at that moment, we were walking through a season where we had to be somewhere that we did not want to be because of government issues and visa issues
Mm.
and things like that. And I'm waking up every day thinking, I want to be where I want to be. I want to be doing what I'm doing, and I can't get there. And it's like Psalm 23 became this new thing to me
Mm.
that I would get up and read, and I would just let that wash over me. And I began to realize, I'm not alone in this deal. And we're all pressed on every side, right? And but I have a shepherd who
Mm.
who leads and guides and corrects
Mm.
and loves me. And
Yeah.
I, it, I mean, I hope I convey that in the book. I really do.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I've loved your heart as a shepherd, as a pastor, to share in the book. To share from your experiences and your stories, so many examples that you've put in the book, and then other stories that you've collected from others. And yeah, I found it to be a very personal, you know uh, something that really draws you in and connects with you at a deep level, and helps you gain that perspective. And then in this political season we're in right now, I think if everyone in America get a copy of this book,
That'd be wonderful. Yeah.
it'd probably
Yeah.
bring the tone down a little bit, and help people stop demonizing each other, and realizing that it's not about it's about people, but we're making it about so many other things, and we don't see each other as people. So Yeah.
Yeah. And my vocation is working as a missionary, but my heart is pastoral,
Mm.
right? So everything I write is going to come from a pastoral uh, perspective.
Mm.
How's this going to help someone grow? How's this going to help someone take it one more step in their walk with the Lord? And you know, uh, to me, if I were still in America and still pastoring a church, I I would be turning because I want. I guess what I'm saying is after your 40 minutes on Sunday morning, oftentimes that's the end. But the
Mm.
message that you have prepared, that you've brought forth from the scriptures, that you've poured your heart into so that people could grow, sort of ends. But by
Yeah.
putting it into recording, into book form and all that, you're able to, if nothing else, help your own congregation to take that, rethink it, look
Mm.
at it in a different way.
Yeah.
That's why I include like reflection questions at the end of
Yes.
each chapter,
Yeah.
because I don't want you just to, I want to get through, 200 pages. I love what you said. I read this chapter today and I reflect on these questions. I think about these questions and I
Mm.
let that germinate and ruminate, throughout the day. And then we pick up the next one.
Mm.
And yeah, in the end, yeah, I want to make money. Let's just be honest. I want to see this succeed,
Sure.
but success is not just the money. Success is also what am I doing to help build the kingdom? What am I
Yeah.
doing to help someone who is, they're just saying, man, I just don't know what today's going to bring, and I don't know
Mm.
how to handle this. And I
Yeah.
give them one tool, that just helps them grab on to, the end of the rope and get through the day and say, you know what, we can do this. And
Mm.
Christ is in me. He's the hope of glory, and
Yeah.
I'm going to move forward.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, hope my mom and grandma aren't listening because this is on my Christmas list to get them for Christmas a copy of your
Well, thank
book
you.
because
Thank you.
my grandma is 92 and she loves to
Wow.
read and I won't say how old my mom is, but anyway, um, but these I thought of them. I thought of my kids even in fact because you talked about like the anxiousness of young people today. The anxiety
Mhm.
is through the roof. So whether I think this is great for people of any age, whether you have high school, college kids that maybe have never really gotten into Psalm 23 and understand it. Maybe this is the first time they're going to hear that message, and for those
Yeah.
for whom it maybe is familiar, but like you say, too familiar that they can't apply it to our crazy, anxious world today. But it's a message we need to hear, and it's something that's easily accessible that now can become something tangible we can put into people's hands and share with them. So
Thank you.
yeah, it's definitely on my gift list to give away here this Christmas. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
do you
Yeah.
have anything else? Was there any surprise or any aha, maybe personally, that came to you that you haven't shared yet in the book writing process, or as the book has come out, some blessing that you didn't expect? Maybe if there's just one last thing you might leave with us. So.
Yeah. It, I, there were probably too many surprise moments to categorize. It's like, oh, okay, now it makes sense or whatever. But I will say this let me tell you not what not to do as a writer. Never write two books at the same time.
Oh boy,
I
okay.
I was under contract to write a textbook to teach a
Oh,
Romans and Galatians textbook that's going to be distributed among around 400 different Bible school campuses across the world.
wow.
So I'm writing both of those at the same time. Um, so the aha moment was, don't ever do that again. So um, because when you're independently publishing, you can kind of push your deadline a little bit. You can, but I was on a strict deadline with the publisher of the textbook.
Hmm.
But I think, yeah, for me, the the process of writing to me is like prayer.
Hmm.
I'm 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 thinking of a thought. I'm working with the scripture, and I'm thinking, Lord, how what can I say here to help someone?
Hmm.
How can you lead me in this direction? So to me, it becomes I won't say it's prayer, but it's a form of
Mhm.
prayer that helps me to just think deeply about the scripture, to think deeply about how it applies to our lives, to think deeply about transformation that needs to happen in my own heart. And here's what happens every time I write every book I write. This happens. The thing I'm writing about, God takes me through. Right. So I'm like,
Mhm.
so I'm walking through this whole thing about anxiety, having assurance, all this, and we thought we had walked through a difficult season, and we only walked out of one to walk into an even vastly more difficult season of
Mhm.
ministry and mission. And it's like the principles that God was helping me to process through were things I was putting into effect right there, right there,
Okay,
right
wow.
there. And, and I'm like, I'd really rather just write from somebody else's experience, Lord, but hey,
Yes.
right. But yeah, I think that for me, that's what it was. Is like, okay, thanks. Uh, but I think it creates a more genuine
Yeah. Yeah.
in product, if you will.
Yeah. It's like God's given us more like fresh manna for today. He's not just writing for stuff from the past, but okay, the Lord
Yeah,
has given us fresh application today for this message. So
yeah. So,
wow.
but then it makes you afraid to write on the next subject, right? Like,
I
oh
know,
God.
right? I want to write a book about moving to Hawaii. So
Yeah. There we go. There we go. But
please, Lord, call me there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Well, who knows?
I know, right?
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, Danny, I think people would probably want to get in touch with you for a number of reasons. I think there are some pastors, missionaries who say, I'd love to learn Danny's process for writing a book. I think maybe you need to have a platform on helping people do that. You've created a system, and you've got so many things to offer. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, maybe about the book writing process, or they want to get a copy of your book, or maybe they want to learn about your ministry in Uganda, or
sure.
anything else, how can folks get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, the best way is our website,
Mm.
which is equippedservant.com.
Mm.
And that's where I do most of my writing weekly.
Okay.
And there's some free courses on there. I'm just trying to be a resource for people.
Mm.
You can get my email address there, um,
Awesome.
uh, and other contact information, to either text or email or whatever. And that's the easiest thing. As far as the book, it's available at any major retailer,
Mhm.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple, all of
Awesome.
that. I will say this, though, there's another excellent, wonderful book called The Way of the Shepherd about leadership.
Okay.
So buy that one too, but don't forget to kind of get mine. Yeah. And
Mm.
so, but yeah, it's available there. There's links on the website, so that's really
Okay.
that's the best way to find us there. Or
Awesome.
obviously we're on Facebook, all that.
Mm.
I'm
Great.
just foraying into the world of Instagram. I know I'm like 20 years behind times, but
You and me
but
both. Yeah.
um,
No,
but
that's awesome. Yeah, there's
yeah,
so many different ways today to try to connect with people and share the message. And seems like there's
yeah,
a new social media thing coming out every new platform every day. So, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
awesome.
But yeah,
Well, Danny,
but
thank you for taking your time to be on the show today. I know it's been a blessing to me. I'm sure it's been a blessing to someone else listening today as well. So, thank you so
hey,
much.
thank you, and thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for what you're doing. I really appreciate your ministry, and I know you're helping pastors to relieve some stress and anxiety about the future because
Hmm.
they have a plan for providing for their family, and that's a noble thing, and I really appreciate that.
Wasn't Danny great? I love how he is leveraging his 30 plus years of ministry experience into books and other resources that inspire and bless others and generate multiple streams of income for his family. And I really love his motivation behind it all to multiply his ministry impact, to be a better steward of the resources God has already helped him to create, and how to provide more for his family to help fund his retirement years in the future. And I really do think his book, The Way of the Shepherd, is one that you're going to want to pick up and read for yourself. Maybe even share it with your church or those you know who are facing anxiety, uncertainty, or struggles. My first time through, I started to read it for the task of preparing for my episode with Danny, and eventually I wanted to write a review of the book for this podcast and blog. But I quickly discovered I needed to read that book again. I needed to not just read it for the information it contained. I needed to read it to allow the transformation that God wanted to do as I read and engaged with the scripture, with Danny's insights, the wisdom that he shared, and the reflections and the work that I did to reflect on each reading. And as God spoke to me, I realized I needed not just the information, but the transformation that God wanted to do as I read the book, the transformation inside of me. I'd been going through a season of setbacks, disappointments, unmet expectations, and some unrealized dreams, personally, ministry-wise, and financially. And I didn't know I needed to encounter Psalm 23 again and find the shepherd who can meet me and guide me through those frustrating times and help transform every aspect of my life with his peace as I learn to trust him more. So I really enjoyed The Way of the Shepherd, and I really do think it could be one of those books that I pick up year after year and read over and over. The book really does lend itself as a devotional designed for easy reading and meaningful reflection. There are 18 chapters, and each one is filled with scriptural insights and personal, memorable stories from Danny's life and ministry. So my advice is, don't rush it. Read it a chapter a day. Engage with the reflection questions and ask God to help you see Psalm 23 and your anxiety, struggles, or pain with fresh eyes. I think you'll be glad you did. Well, that's it for today's show. Thanks again for joining me today. If you want to check out our blog post for this episode, you can go to morethanapastor.com/70. You'll find the link to Danny's website there as well. And remember, be sure to come back next time for part 2 of our conversation with Danny, where he talks so much more about the practical how-tos, the lessons he's learned of becoming a writer and building a successful self-publishing business. I know you won't want to miss that. I hope this episode has been helpful for you. If so, why don't you share it with someone else? Maybe think of someone else that could use this message today. Send this episode to them, or maybe share it on social media and let people know about the show. That's a big help for us, helps us to spread the word about More Than a Pastor so we can connect with more people. Hey, until next time, remember that you are more than a pastor. Saying yes to God's call doesn't mean you have to say yes to feeling stuck, broke, or unfulfilled in your life and ministry. Let's work together and help you create the life, impact, and income that you were made for.